a very important topic that we'll be covering today. Maria gave a little bit of my background, and a lot of my background, and I appreciate that. But I really love the building codes, and I know that might sound like I have some sort of sickness, but I love them. And this is a part of the codes that I think is lacking quite a bit. And so years ago, I started to try to present to building officials the importance of making sure that seismic restraint was being provided of non-structural components in areas of highest seismicity. And it was really hard for them to grasp it because the code is somewhat silent. And I hope today we can kind of clarify what is actually in the code and what really should be provided in relation to non-structural components. I know there's a really good mix. Those that attend these SKGOS webinars, we have a lot of enforcement personnel that are building officials. We have a lot of you that are designers as well. So we have a good mix on both sides. Some of you do this probably for a living, design the seismic restraint. So this might be pretty remedial for you. But I hope that there's going to be some benefits for all as we go through this. Let me just start on this. So this is the way we're going to lay this out. We have 2 hours to go over things. Like Maria mentioned, we're going to go about a half hour in. We'll have a short break, and then we'll start to answer questions. So please start to, as we go through this, any specific questions that you have, try to post them in the Q&A. And when we get back from each short break, we'll try to address them. You may not have too many in the beginning because we're going to really start by just doing an introduction on what are non-structural components, what is seismic restraint, why is it important. So we'll go through that. Then we're going to really hit on the code requirements, what's in the IBC, and then also the reference standard, which is ASCE 7 that the IBC takes us to. We're going to cover exemptions. We'll go over what are the minimum submittals that you should be providing to the enforcement agency, to the jurisdiction. We'll talk about when special inspections are going to be required on this seismic restraint. And then we'll go over a couple of examples, and we'll discuss where you can find more examples and figure out how to do designs for different elements if you're responsible for putting those together. Okay. Sorry, I just gave a webinar yesterday that was most of the day, so I lost a little bit of my voice, so I'm going to be taking more drinks as we're going through. So first of all, let's start on this introduction. What is it? What are we talking about? I think most of you that are on this webinar, you're on it for a reason, and you know what non-structural components are. Most of you are probably in areas of high seismicity. As you can see in this picture, this is what happens a lot of time after a seismic event. If we were to look on the outside of this building, the building probably is intact and has minimal damage. In a lot of cases, that's what we see throughout the U.S. But inside, and a lot of the non-structural components associated with that building, it is not intact. And several things are going to have to be done before you can continue to use that building or return to use that building. All right, so structural elements. When we're talking about actual structural elements, we're talking about those components that are part of the primary building structure, right? The beams, the columns, the foundations, those sorts of things. When we're discussing non-structural components, we're talking about some secondary elements that are associated with the facility that allow it to function the way it needs to. So oftentimes when we deal with that, those non-structural components actually add up to be the greatest value of that building, that that primary structure winds up being a very small portion of the overall cost. Here's a nice little image that we have that I had a reference down there before, but I've seen this on several different documents that are out there. I think this one was actually taken from a FEMA document, and I wish I had the right one there. But there's been several studies, and you might have seen this before. It breaks out if it's an office, if it's a hotel, a hospital, or some other sort of community building, what percentage of what is of the cost is associated with the content of that building, such as furnishings or lab equipment. What percentage are the non-structural components that we might have, and then what percentage, which is the green, and this, I don't know why it's not showing that in the legend, but is the primary structure for the building.